You catch yourself, in quiet moments, replaying an old conversation or a specific incident with vivid, emotional clarity. It is not a casual memory, but a charged reenactment where you feel the sting of the words or the injustice of the action all over again. Your inner monologue provides commentary, highlighting the faults of the other person and the righteousness of your own position. This mental ritual is not for understanding, but for feeling. Each replay is a covert ceremony where you reaffirm your grievance, polishing the details until they shine with a sharp, familiar pain. It is the mindless way of keeping a wound open, refusing to let it scar over, ensuring that the past remains a present, active participant in your emotional life, dictating your mood from the shadows of your own thoughts. A person's name is mentioned, or you see a notification from them, and a wave of sour feeling, a tightness in your chest or a knot in your stomach, washes over you before you can even form a conscious thought. This is the visceral footprint of resentment, the body remembering what the mind tries to manage. It is an emotional echo, a conditioned response that bypasses logic. That immediate, physical recoil is a signal that your nervous system has filed that person under threat, associating them not with their current self, but with the historical injury they represent. This echo proves the resentment is not an intellectual exercise. It is a living somatic reality stored in your muscles and your breath, activated in an instant by the slightest trigger. You maintain a private, mental ledger of wrongs. This is not a simple list, but an accounting of debts you believe are owed to you. Apologies not given, fairness not restored, recognition withheld. You know, with precise detail, what the other person has taken and what they must do to balance the books. The scorecard is your proof, your evidence against anyone who might suggest you let it go. You review it not with sadness, but with a simmering sense of righteousness. This internal accounting isolates you, however, because the other person is almost always entirely unaware of the debt you have assigned them. You are the banker, the judge, and the claimant in a court that never adjourns, prosecuting a case the defendant does not know is being tried. Your bitterness over a specific person or event begins to color your entire worldview. You start to approach new situations or people with a preemptive skepticism, a fool-me-once attitude that assumes you will be let down, used, or taken for granted again. A genuine compliment is met with suspicion. A kind offer is scrutinized for hidden motives. The original resentment has mutated into a general principle about human nature. This cynicism acts as a psychological immune response, a way to armor yourself against future hurt by believing the worst in advance. But the cost is a life lived in grayscale, where trust becomes a dangerous gamble and potential joy is sacrificed on the altar of past pain. You protect a wound by refusing to let anything new touch it, ensuring it never heals. When you hear of a misfortune or struggle befalling the person you resent, you feel a cold, hollow satisfaction. Or worse, nothing at all. The natural human impulse to empathize has been surgically disconnected where they are concerned. Their pain does not move you. It may even feel like a form of cosmic justice or a long-awaited consequence. This emotional shutdown is a protective barrier, a way to prevent any compassionate thought from weakening your justified anger. You consciously or unconsciously dehumanize them, stripping them of the complexity that would make their suffering matter. This loss of empathy is a poison that does not just affect your view of them. It subtly hardens your heart in general, making it harder to access softness and compassion, even for those you love. As you practice the art of emotional withdrawal, your communications become laced with subtle barbs, dismissive tones, or strategic silence. You say "I'm fine" in a way that clearly means the opposite. You offer backhanded compliments, or you forget to include them in important information. This is the guerrilla warfare of resentment, where direct conflict is avoided, but a steady, low-grade hostility is transmitted. Each of these acts is a tiny discharge of the anger you are refusing to express openly. It is a way to make the other person feel your displeasure without having to take the risk of an honest confrontation. The tragic irony is that this behavior often creates new conflicts and misunderstandings, giving you fresh, justifiable reasons to resent them further, while the original wound remains unaddressed and festering beneath the surface. You find yourself having extensive, imaginary conversations with the person who wronged you. In these one-sided dialogues, you are always eloquent, righteous, and devastatingly effective. You finally tell them exactly how they hurt you, and they, in your mind, offer a perfect, cathartic apology, or are rendered speechless by your truth. This fantasy is a substitute for the resolution you crave in reality. It is a sign that the unresolved issue is taking up valuable mental real estate as you rehearse for a play that will never open. While it may provide temporary emotional relief, it ultimately deepens the resentment as the gap between your satisfying fantasy and the silent, unchanged reality grows wider, making the actual person seem even more inadequate and frustrating. You struggle to feel genuine happiness for the successes or good fortune of the person you resent. A promotion, a personal milestone, a moment of joy in their life lands with a dull thud in your heart. You may downplay their achievement, attribute it to luck, or quickly change the subject. This inability to celebrate them is resentment's shadow, the flip side of your pain. Your mind, in its effort to protect the narrative of your grievance, interprets their happiness as an insult to your suffering. It feels like their joy somehow validates the original hurt, as if they have moved on unscathed while you remain burdened. In stealing their joy, you only poison your own capacity for lightness, tying your emotional state to someone you wish to forget. Resentment is not an abstract emotion. It is a tension you wear. You may notice your jaw is perpetually tight, your shoulders are hunched near your ears, or a specific familiar ache returns to your stomach or chest when you dwell on the past. Your body is quite literally holding on to the grudge, storing the unexpressed anger and hurt in your musculature and nervous system. This somatic archive is a testament to the fact that what you have not released, your physiology retains. You may mistake it for generic stress, but its trigger is specific. That clenched fist, that knot between your shoulder blades, is the physical script of your story of injustice, written in the language of chronic strain, a constant, low-level reminder that a part of you is still braced for a fight that is already over. You have a distilled, perfected version of what happened that you share, either outwardly with sympathetic listeners or inwardly with yourself. This story has clear heroes and villains, and its details are fixed. There is no room in this narrative for new perspectives, for the other person's context, or for your own potential role in the dynamic. Reciting it is a ritual of validation. Each telling reconfirms your victimhood and their blameworthiness. The story becomes your identity, a badge of pain you are unwilling to relinquish because to edit the narrative, to complicate it with nuance, feels like a betrayal of your own suffering. It becomes a prison of your own making, where you are forever the central character in a tragedy you are powerless to end, because the ending would mean letting go of the story itself. You approach interactions with the person, or even topics related to them, with a palpable, pre-armed defensiveness. Your posture stiffens, your tone becomes clipped, your humor vanishes. You are psychologically already in the ring, gloves up before a single challenging word has been spoken. This aura is a force field made of anticipation. You expect to be slighted, misunderstood, or attacked, so your entire being prepares for that reality. It often provokes the very negativity you expect, as people react to your bristling energy with confusion or their own defensiveness. This creates a self-fulfilling prophecy where every encounter becomes evidence that you were right to be guarded, tightening the knot of resentment further and proving to you that the past is not past at all, but a living threat. The person you resent becomes a flat, one-dimensional character in your mind. They are the narcissist, the betrayer, the user, all of their previous complexity. Their good qualities and the positive history you may have shared are erased by the bright, blinding light of the injury. This cognitive flattening is a psychological necessity for your resentment to survive. It is too difficult to sustain white-hot anger toward a full, flawed human being, so you reduce them to a caricature, a symbol of the wrong they committed. In doing so, you also impoverish your own history and memory, airbrushing out any shades of gray that might compel understanding or, worse, forgiveness. You are left with a simple, painful story. But you have lost the truth of a complex relationship. A cold, quiet calculation runs in the background of your mind. You weigh the emotional cost of addressing the issue against the perceived benefit, and consistently decide that speaking your truth is too risky, too exhausting, or ultimately futile. This isn't patience. It's a state of resigned imprisonment. You convince yourself that holding the resentment is less painful than the vulnerability of confrontation or the potential upheaval of a resolution. So you choose the devil you know, the familiar ache of the grudge over the frightening uncertainty of release. This internal lock keeps you trapped in a stagnant dynamic, paying a daily tax of bitterness because you believe the price of freedom, The courage to have a difficult conversation or to truly let go is somehow higher. The resentment becomes a costly investment you refuse to divest from. The original injury becomes a cornerstone of your self-concept. You introduce yourself to your own psyche not as you are, but as the person who was wronged. Phrases like, after what they did to me, or because of that time, become key prefixes to your decisions and worldview. This identity is heavy, but it is also perversely comforting. It provides a clear explanation for your pain, your caution, or your cynicism. To consider releasing the resentment feels like an existential threat, as if you would be losing a fundamental part of who you are. You cling to the wound because it has become your story, and without it, you fear you might not know who you are anymore. Forced to build an identity from materials other than pain and injustice, you begin to sift through your entire shared history with this person, reinterpreting past events through the harsh, definitive lens of the final grievance, that generous thing they did a decade ago. Now it must have been manipulative, a period of closeness, merely a setup for the eventual betrayal. This retrospective contamination poisons your entire memory bank. It allows you to build a seamless, airtight case against them, where the ending proves the beginning was always flawed. This rewrite is a desperate act of mental self-preservation, an attempt to make the past consistent with your present pain, to eliminate any nostalgic pull or good memory that might weaken your resolve to stay angry. It creates a prison of perfect, tragic logic, where every good moment was a lie, and the present bitterness is the only truth. Unconsciously, you may undermine new relationships, opportunities, or moments of peace, because on a deep level, they feel like a betrayal of your old hurt. If you are happy, how can you still be justified in your anger? If you trust someone new, does it mean the old betrayal didn't matter? So you create conflict where there is none, pick at minor flaws in new partners, or refuse to fully invest in a fresh start. This self-sabotage is resentment's final, cruel defense mechanism. It ensures your emotional environment remains consistent with the story of injury you are committed to. You reject the sunshine because you have grown accustomed to the gloom, proving to yourself that the world is indeed as untrustworthy as you believed, all while you secretly hold the keys to your own cell. You find yourself drawn to or cultivating friendships where the primary bond is mutual grievance. Conversations become sessions of co-validation, where you trade stories of wrongdoing and affirm each other's right to endless bitterness. This alliance feels like support, but it is a form of emotional echo chamber that amplifies and solidifies your resentment. These relationships reinforce the narrative that you are a perpetual victim of a cruel world. They do not challenge you to heal. They encourage you to marinate. While the camaraderie feels good initially, it ultimately traps you in a cycle of recycled pain, making your resentment a social currency and a cornerstone of the friendship. To consider forgiveness or moving on would not just be a personal shift. It would feel like a betrayal of the entire alliance. Your focus shifts from your own internal healing to a rigid demand for external justice. You become fixated on the idea that the other person must admit their fault, suffer a consequence, or have their reputation tarnished in exactly the way you envision. This obsession is a diversion from the harder work of processing your own hurt. It places your emotional recovery entirely in the hands of the person who wounded you, giving them perpetual power over your peace. You wait for a satisfaction that may never come, watching for signs of their comeuppance, while your own life stands still. The quest for justice becomes a prison, where you are both the warden and the inmate, waiting for a key that someone else holds. Outwardly, you may believe you have moved on, but a random scent, a phrase, a place, or a piece of music can trigger a sudden, overwhelming detonation of the old anger and hurt. This reactivity proves the emotion is not resolved. It is merely buried. You are walking through a field of your own past, never knowing when a hidden memory will explode underfoot. This lack of predictability keeps you on edge and proves to you that the wound is still raw, powerful, and in control. It shatters the illusion of progress, revealing the resentment as a live wire, carefully insulated but never disconnected, capable of electrifying your present with the pain of your past at a moment's notice. After years of carrying the weight, you may experience a final, hollow stage where the sharp anger fades into a pervasive emotional numbness, specifically around the memory of the person or event. This is not peace. It is the dividend paid by prolonged resentment, the feeling of a heart that has been so vigorously defended it has gone silent. The color has drained from that chapter of your life, leaving only a gray, indifferent void. You do not feel anger anymore. You feel nothing, and that absence is the ultimate cost. It signifies a part of your capacity to feel has been cauterized to spare you pain. But in the process, you have forfeited a piece of your own vitality. The resentment is gone, but so is your connection to that part of your own history, leaving a cold, quiet space where a feeling, however painful, used to live. Resentment is not a single emotion, but a process. It begins as a rightful hurt, a wound that demands acknowledgement. But when that pain is left unattended, it undergoes a quiet, insidious. It builds a fortress around your heart, brick by brick, using the materials of replay, scorekeeping, and cynicism. It rewrites your history, flattens complex people into villains, and casts a shadow over your present and future. The signs we have explored are the architecture of that fortress, the silent rituals of a prison you maintain. Holding resentment is ultimately a choice to live in the past, paying for an old debt with your current joy. The pathway is not always forgiveness of the other, but a courageous decision to stop paying for a crime that no longer needs sentencing, to lay down the burden of proof, and to walk out of the court you built, leaving the gavel silent at last.